Be me, a 25-year-old aspiring journalist, working as an intern at a local newspaper. It's been 6 months since I started, and I've been trying to make a name for myself in the competitive world of journalism. My boss, Mrs. Thompson, is a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, with a sharp tongue and high expectations. She calls me into her office one day, and I can tell by the look on her face that it's not going to be a pleasant conversation. "Ah, Alex, have a seat," she says, her voice firm but not unkind. "I've been reviewing your work, and I have to say, I'm a bit disappointed." I feel a knot in my stomach as I sit down, trying to think of what I could have done wrong. "I've been working hard, Mrs. Thompson," I say, trying to defend myself. "I've been putting in extra hours, trying to get the best stories." "I'm not disputing that, Alex," she interrupts. "You have potential, but potential doesn't pay the bills. What I need is results. And unfortunately, your results have been lacking." I feel a surge of frustration and defensiveness, but I try to keep my cool. "I understand what you're saying, Mrs. Thompson. But I'm willing to learn, to improve. Just give me a chance." Mrs. Thompson sighs, leaning back in her chair. "Alex, I've given you chance after chance. But the truth is, you're just not cutting it. You're too slow, too inexperienced. And to be honest, you're too little, too late." Those 3 words hit me like a punch to the gut. Too little, too late. I repeat, trying to process what she's saying. "What do you mean by that?" Mrs. Thompson leans forward, her eyes piercing. "I mean that the stories you're working on are old news, Alex. Everyone else has already covered them. You're not bringing anything new to the table. And by the time you do manage to get a story out, it's already been done to death by someone else." I feel a wave of despair wash over me as I realize that she's right. I don't know what to say," I stutter, feeling like I've been knocked off my feet. Mrs. Thompson's expression softens slightly, but her voice remains firm. "I think it's time for you to consider a different career path, Alex. Journalism just isn't for you." Those words echo in my mind like a death sentence. Too little, too late, I think to myself, feeling like I've failed before I even had a chance to start. Is that really all there is to it? I slumped back in my chair, feeling like I'd been deflated. The words, "too little, too late," kept echoing in my mind, taunting me with their cruel simplicity. I glanced up at Mrs. Thompson, searching for any glimmer of hope, but her expression remained resolute. But I've worked so hard," I protested, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "I've poured my heart and soul into these stories. I'm sure I can make a difference, if just given the chance." Mrs. Thompson sighed, her eyes clouding over with a mixture of disappointment and pity. "Alex, it's not about working hard. It's about being relevant. And right now, you're just not. You're like a small boat trying to navigate a stormy sea, getting tossed about by waves that are far bigger than you are." I felt a surge of frustration at her words, but I knew she was right. I had been struggling to make a name for myself in the competitive world of journalism, and it seemed like no matter how hard I tried, I was always one step behind. I understand what you're saying," I said slowly, trying to process my thoughts. "But what about all the times I've gotten feedback that my writing is good? That I have a unique perspective?" Mrs. Thompson leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers together. "That may be true, Alex. But good writing and a unique perspective are only half the battle. The other half is timing, and that's where you're falling short. You're like a singer who shows up to the audition after the competition is over. It doesn't matter how beautiful your voice is if no one is there to hear it." I felt a lump form in my throat as I listened to her words. It was like she was confirming all my deepest fears, that I was indeed too little, too late. That I would never be good enough, no matter how hard I tried. As I sat there, feeling like my world was crumbling around me, I couldn't help but think about all the times I dreamed of being a journalist. I'd imagined myself as a fearless reporter, uncovering secrets and telling stories that needed to be told. But now, it seemed like that dream was slipping further and further away from me. What about the story I'm working on now? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. The one about the local community center. I've been researching it for weeks, and I'm sure it's going to be a great piece. Mrs. Thompson's expression turned skeptical. Alex, that story has been done to death. Every other journalist in town has already covered it. What could you possibly bring to the table that's new and interesting? I felt a wave of defensiveness wash over me, but I knew I had to be honest with myself. Was I really just rehashing old news, or did I have something unique to offer? I thought back to all the hours I'd spent researching, interviewing, and writing. Had it all been for nothing? As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, Mrs. Thompson's words echoed in my mind like a mantra, too little, too late. Was that really all there was to it? Or was there still a way for me to prove her wrong, to show her that I was more than just a small, insignificant voice in a crowded room? I slumped back in my chair, feeling the weight of Mrs. Thompson's words bearing down on me. I understand what you're saying, but I really believe I have a fresh perspective on this story, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've been talking to some of the community center's staff and volunteers, and they've shared some amazing stories about the impact it's had on the local kids. I think I can bring a human element to the story that will resonate with readers. Mrs. Thompson raised an eyebrow, her expression unimpressed. Go on, she said, her tone dripping with skepticism. I took a deep breath and launched into a passionate explanation of my vision for the story. I want to focus on the people who make the community center tick, the ones who are dedicated to making a difference in their community. I've met a woman who's been volunteering there for over a decade, and her story is incredible. She's seen generations of families come through the center's doors, and she's had a hand in shaping the lives of countless kids. I think her story, and the stories of others like her, can bring a new level of depth and emotion to the piece. As I spoke, I couldn't help but think about the hours I'd spent researching, the countless interviews I'd conducted, and the drafts I'd written and rewritten. Had it all been for nothing? The thought sent a pang of doubt through my mind, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the conviction that had driven me to pursue this story in the first place. I know it's not a hard-hitting, investigative piece, I continued, but I believe it's a story that needs to be told. It's about the power of community, the impact that one person can have on others, and the ripple effects that can spread out from a single act of kindness. I think it's a story that can inspire people, make them feel good about their community, and maybe even motivate them to get involved and make a difference themselves. Mrs. Thompson leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she regarded me. I'll give you credit, Alex, she said, her voice a little softer than before. You're passionate about this story, and that's great. But passion only takes you so far. What I need to see is evidence that you can execute, that you can take this idea and turn it into something compelling and engaging. Can you do that? I felt a surge of determination rise up within me. I was going to prove Mrs. Thompson wrong, show her that I was more than just a small, insignificant voice in a crowded room. Yes, I can, I said, my voice firm and resolute. I'll make this story happen, and I'll make it count. As I left Mrs. Thompson's office, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was standing at a crossroads. The doubt that had been lingering in the back of my mind was now staring me straight in the face, and I knew I had to confront it head-on. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs, and let my eyes wander around the bustling newsroom. The sound of keyboards clacking, papers shuffling, and muted conversations created a symphony of background noise that was both familiar and comforting. I spotted my colleague, Rachel, sitting at her desk, typing away on her computer. She looked up as I approached, a questioning expression on her face. Hey, how did it go with Mrs. Thompson? She asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. I dropped into the chair beside her, letting out a sigh. It was enlightening, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Oh. What did she say? I leaned in, my voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. She thinks I'm passionate, but she's not convinced I can execute. She wants to see evidence, proof that I can turn this story into something real. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. That's fair. Mrs. Thompson's not one to sugarcoat things. But I know you, Alex. You're driven, and you're talented. You just need to show her. I smiled wryly, feeling a surge of gratitude towards Rachel. Thanks for the vote of confidence. But I need to prove it to myself, too. I need to make this story happen, and I need to make it count. As I spoke, an idea began to take shape in my mind. I could feel the pieces clicking into place, like a puzzle emerging from a jumble of disconnected thoughts. I'm going to start with the community center, I said, my voice filled with newfound determination. I'll talk to the people who work there, the volunteers, the kids who attend programs. I'll get their stories, their perspectives, and I'll share them with the world. Rachel's eyes lit up. That's a great idea. The community center is the heart of this neighborhood. If you can capture its spirit, its essence, you'll have a story that'll resonate with people. I nodded, feeling a sense of purpose wash over me. I'll make it happen, Rachel. I'll make this story shine, and I'll prove to Mrs. Thompson, to myself, and to everyone else that I'm more than just a small voice in a crowded room. As I stood up, a sense of resolve settled within me. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face the challenges, to put in the work, and to make this story a reality. The doubt that had been lurking in the shadows was slowly receding, replaced by a growing sense of confidence, of conviction. I was going to tell this story, and I was going to tell it well. As I walked out of the coffee shop with Rachel, the warm sunshine and gentle breeze seemed to echo the newfound determination that was building inside me. I felt a sense of clarity, a sense of direction that I hadn't felt in a long time. I turned to Rachel, who was walking beside me, and asked, "Do you think you could introduce me to some of the people at the community center? Maybe get me in touch with the director or some of the volunteers?" Rachel nodded, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I'd be happy to. I've worked with them on a few projects, and I'm sure they'd be more than willing to talk to you. Let me give them a call and set something up." As we walked, I couldn't help but think about the story that I wanted to tell. I wanted to capture the essence of the community center, to show the world what made it so special. I wanted to hear the stories of the people who worked there, the volunteers who dedicated their time and energy to making a difference. I wanted to know about the kids who attended programs, about their hopes and dreams, their struggles and triumphs. "Rachel, what's the community center like?" I asked, my curiosity getting the better of me. "What kind of programs do they offer?" Rachel smiled, launching into a detailed description of the center's activities. "They have after-school programs for kids, tutoring, sports leagues, art classes, the list goes on. They also have a food bank, a clothing drive, and a mentorship program. It's really an amazing place, and the people who work there are so dedicated, so passionate about what they do." As Rachel talked, I found myself imagining the stories that I could tell. I pictured a young girl, sitting in an art class, her eyes shining with creativity as she painted a vibrant picture. I pictured a volunteer, tireless and selfless, dedicating hours of their time to helping others. I pictured the director, a visionary leader who had brought the community together to create something truly special. As we turned the corner onto the street where the community center was located, I felt a surge of excitement. I could see the building in the distance, a nondescript structure that belied the vibrant, thriving community that existed within its walls. "Okay, let's go inside," Rachel said, pushing open the door. "I'll introduce you to Karen, the director. She's an amazing woman, and I know she'll be happy to talk to you." As we stepped inside, I was immediately struck by the warm, welcoming atmosphere. The walls were adorned with colorful posters, and the sound of laughter and chatter filled the air. I felt a sense of belonging, of being part of something bigger than myself. "Karen, this is the writer I was telling you about," Rachel said, leading me to a woman with a kind face and a warm smile. "She's interested in telling the story of the community center, and I think she could do a great job." Karen's eyes lit up, and she extended a hand. "Welcome," she said. "We're always happy to share our story with others. I think you'll find that we're a pretty special place." As I shook her hand, I felt a sense of gratitude, of appreciation for the opportunity that lay before me. I knew that I had a lot of work to do, but I was ready to put in the time, to listen to the stories, to capture the essence of this vibrant, thriving community. I was ready to tell their story, and to make it shine. As I sat down with Karen in a cozy corner of the community center, surrounded by the hum of conversation and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, I felt my mind racing with excitement and anticipation. I pulled out my notebook and pen, ready to absorb every word, every story, every detail that Karen was willing to share. "So, tell me," I said, leaning forward, my eyes locked on Karen's, "what makes this community center so special? What's the heart and soul of this place?" Karen's smile grew wider, and she leaned back in her chair, a faraway look in her eyes. "It's the people," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "It's the way we come together, support each other, and uplift one another. We're more than just a community center, we're a family." I nodded, my pen scribbling down notes as I listened intently. "I can see that," I said. "The energy in this place is palpable. But what about the history of the center? How did it all begin?" Karen's eyes sparkled, and she launched into a story about the center's humble beginnings, about the group of dedicated volunteers who had worked tirelessly to bring the community together. As she spoke, I found myself transported to a different time, a different era, one of struggle and perseverance. As I listened, my inner monologue kicked in. "This is it," I thought. "This is the story I've been searching for. The story of hope, of resilience, of the human spirit." I felt a surge of creative energy course through my veins, and I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. "I'm so grateful to be here," I said, interrupting Karen's story, my voice filled with sincerity. "I promise to do justice to your story, to capture the essence of this incredible community." Karen's face lit up with a warm smile, and she reached out, placing a hand on my arm. "I know you will," she said. "I can see it in your eyes, you have a passion, a fire that burns within you. We're lucky to have you tell our story." As I smiled back at her, feeling a sense of connection, of understanding, I knew that this was just the beginning of an incredible journey. A journey that would take me deep into the heart of this community, and one that would change me forever.